Welcome to the WoW, Wings of Wisdom podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration, brought to you by the Writing and Communication Center at Ashland University. In each episode, we invite a remarkable guest from our university community to share their journey, explore the power of communication, and unveil the strategies they use to guide students toward growth and success. Whether you're a learner, an educator, or someone captivated by the stories of triumph and discovery in the academic world, you're in the right place. So settle in, open your mind, and prepare to soar on the wings of wisdom.
All right. Welcome to the WoW. This is your host, Moser Benset. My co-host today is our WCC coach, Kyan McDonald. Kyan, congrats on finishing this semester.
Thank you.
All A's?
I think so. Grades aren't back yet, but hopefully.
I expect nothing but A's, my friend. And did you have soccer practice today?
Not today, no. I worked as a lifeguard at the rec center, though, but not many people were there, obviously, because of finals and everything.
You worked as what? I'm sorry?
Lifeguard.
Oh, wow. You're doing that too?
Yeah.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, would you like to introduce our incredible guest today?
Of course. Today, we are pleased to welcome a distinguished professor of history and the chair of the Department of History and Political Science at Ashland University. Our guest joined Ashland University in 2001, and he brings a wealth of expertise in modern European, American, and East Asian history. He is not only an esteemed educator, having received the Edward and Luann Taylor Excellence in Teaching Award in 2016, but also is a prolific author. His notable publications include 5 books. His diverse research interests span a remarkable range, covering topics from comic books to Japanese foreign policy. Our guest completed his undergraduate studies at Ohio University and holds both an MA and PhD in history from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Our guest is also a revolutionary educator who creates games for instructional purposes. And beyond academia, he actively participates in charity events as a member of the Ohio Garrison of the 501st Legion, donning a Star Wars Imperial officer uniform. His dedication to both his professional and personal pursuits are what makes him a dynamic and engaging figure in the field of history. He is also a member of the international workout group, F3. Dr. John Moser, welcome to WoW.
Wow, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for that introduction.
Awesome. John, could you tell us a little bit about your time as an undergraduate student? Maybe we can start from there.
It was so long ago. I think I may have to throw my dogs out of here. We'll see if they keep making noise. I was an undergraduate at Ohio University in the late 1980s. And I didn't originally go there to study history. I always liked history, but it just never occurred to me that it might be something I'd major in. I majored in telecommunications. I wanted to be a TV screenwriter, and I actually wrote a full-length movie script while I was there. But from the start, I liked my history classes better. And at a certain point, I said, you know what? I want to study history. I want to be a history professor. I loved my undergraduate years. Ohio University has a reputation as a party school. It is a well-deserved reputation. I had a whole lot of fun in my college years, but I think I also got a really good education there too.
Wonderful. How did those experiences shape your path towards becoming an academic and a scholar? And you mentioned the fun of it, but also what about the academic side?
So I had a particular professor. His name was Don Richter, and I think he just recently passed. And I took multiple courses with him, and he was really dynamic. I enjoyed all of his classes. And what I was most struck by was the amount of fun that he was obviously having teaching. And in fact, a few times at the end of class, I heard him say, "Can you believe I get paid to do this?" And that impressed the heck out of me. And I said, oh, boy, I think I would have fun doing that too. He would actually sometimes portray historical characters in class too. And I thought that was really cool as well. Yeah, so that's what inspired me. Him more than anybody else. Like as I said, I always liked history, but I never thought that it's something I would do as a career until I had classes with Professor Richter.
That's actually a common theme that we hear, and from our current AU professors and how they, kind of chose their own pathways, but also from our students here at AU and how they are majoring or choosing certain majors based on their experiences in certain classes with certain faculty members. I guess that's the legacy, right? Kyan, have you taken any classes with Dr. Moser?
I have. My freshman year, I took the first required Ashbrook course with John Moser. It's with Dr. Moser. It's I'm forgetting what the name of it is, but I know
Western Civilization 1.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
And we did 3 games in that class that were pretty awesome.
Reacting to the past?
Yeah, 3 reacting to the past games. It'd be cool if you could talk a little more about those games and how you were inspired to start teaching with that style.
So I've been using reacting to the past games, and this is a series of role-playing games that are designed for use in college classrooms. And the first games came out in the late 1990s. I didn't learn about them until 2008, when my department chair at the time, David Foster, said, I got sent this. I'm not really interested in using it, but it sounds like something you might want to do. Now, I have loved games ever since I was a kid. I would play really complex war games with moving cardboard pieces around around a map. And I was always looking for opportunities to bring games into my classroom. And mostly I was disappointed with what I did because a lot of the games were pitched at much younger kids. They didn't seem serious enough for me. But when I encountered my first reacting to the past game, and it was about the French Revolution, I thought this is exactly what I've been looking for. So fall of 2008, I taught a course. It was Modern Revolutions, and I did a game on the American Revolution and a game on the French Revolution. And I thought it worked even better than I imagined. So I don't teach every course using them, but most of them I do. And it's really changed the way I teach. I think students, for the most part, really get into it. They learn a lot, and they retain a lot of what they learn. That may be the most important thing for me. In an ordinary Western Civ class, the average student's going to forget 90% of what they learned probably in the first couple of years. But I've talked to students years after they took one of my reacting to the past classes, and they said, you know what, this is like the only class where I feel like I remember everything that we talked about. That means something.
That's amazing. Of course, games are huge in our development as children, and as people grow up, we tend to do things that we don't really enjoy, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Why not with adults, right?
Yeah.
It will still work. I just want to back up a little bit. So you've been at AU since 2001, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey here and how your role has evolved over the years?
Wow. So I defended my dissertation in 95 from the University of Illinois. I first worked for a nonprofit in the DC area. I was there for 3 years. I also adjuncted at George Mason University while I was there. Then I was full-time. My first full-time academic job was at the University of Georgia. I was there from 99 until 2001 and moved here in 2001. And when I first came in, it was just a 1-year gig with the understanding that they were gonna hire that year for tenure track. And I was very excited to get it. So this is the only place I've ever had a tenure track job. I expect that I will be here for the rest of my career, God willing. It's I have been chair of the department for, I think became chair for the first time in fall of 2018. So I've been doing that for a little while. It is what it is, as they say. Chair's not a particularly fun job, but I tell myself that I'm dealing with a lot of BS so that my colleagues don't have to. So yeah, along the way I got tenure and got promoted to associate professor and then to full professor. Yeah, so how's my job evolved? I don't know. It seems like there's more of it now than ever.
So yeah, balancing teaching, creating games, and that's also part of authorship. What else? Chair duties, and plus writing books. And on top of that, you're also active in community theater, active in the F3 community. So how do you manage your time so effectively to be not just an effective professor, but also an academic? What is your secret sauce, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't know. I take one day at a time. I say, all right, what are the things that need to be accomplished today? And I try to budget my year so that if I know I'm going to have an additional responsibility one time, I'm going to push something else to a different time. Of course, my summers are when I do most of my writing. Although I joined the AU writing and research community, which encourages us to work at least a half an hour a day on research. And that's been very helpful to get away from the idea of binge writing. Oh, I can't do anything until I have weeks without having to teach or really do anything else. So of course I'm still going to get a lot of writing done this summer. That's the plan anyway. But I'm finding ways to do it in the regular academic year. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I like keeping busy. And that's helpful. At the end of the day, I just want to shut down, but during the day, I'm pretty much going nonstop on an average day. And F3, far from taking me away from other things, I feel like it energizes me for other things, unless the person leading the workout is a real sadist and I'm beaten down but that's a rare occurrence. Like this morning, Greg McBrayer did a workout. It was hard. But it worked so many different muscle groups. It was the kind of hard workout that I came away with. I felt great all day as a result of it.
But you're gonna feel the pain tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sure,
I'm sure that's right. And I'm the type of person that if I work out first thing in the morning, I generally feel good the rest of the day. If I try to work out in the afternoon, I just want to go to bed.
Time.
So I'm done.
Yeah. I forgot I was gonna ask you. So you talked about F3 and so AURWC. Kyan, have you heard of the community, the AURWC community on campus?
A little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, yeah.
I believe it's also open to students. Students can actually participate. When do you plan your writing every day? So you wake up in the morning, you have your morning routine, you go to the workouts.
Yeah. That's something I need to get better at, in fact, is say this is my time. And I haven't been doing that. And I think for that reason, I haven't been, although I've gotten a lot more done than I have in past years, because I do try to carve out these times. I think I would be more effective if I said, here is my time each day. So I should do that. I haven't so far. I just try to work it in.
So the 30 minutes falls in different times each day, depending on
depending on what else I have going on. But really, there's no reason. I know what my teaching schedule is going to be. My meetings are it's kind of predictable where they are. It shouldn't be difficult for me to say, okay, at 2 p.m. I am shutting everything else off. I'm closing my office door, or maybe it's something I'll do here where the only distractions are really the dogs. and just focus on that. And I have found that it's really surprising what you can do in a half an hour if you push away all the interruptions. I'm not going to deal with my email, for instance.
Right. Right. Distractions. And in my experience, as long as you have the energy too.
Yeah.
You might have the time, but if you wait until later in the evening, that might be tricky too.
Sure. Yeah, right.
So what's your advice to students who wait until the last second to, work on their assignments? You mentioned binge writing, right?
Yeah. You shouldn't do it, but they'll do it anyway. I just got a bunch of papers for my class where we were focusing on Churchill, and I said, yeah, but I want you to draw on the Churchill books that we're reading, his history of the Second World War, but I want you to get some other sources as well and compare Churchill's account of a certain event to something by a more recent historian. I want you to run by me what you want to look at, though. And day before they were due yesterday. Day before yesterday, I was getting emails from students saying, here's the source I want to use. Oh, good. All right. Well, yeah, the paper's due in 24 hours, but all right. So it's the kind of thing where I can say till I'm blue in the face that that's a bad idea. I used to do that as well. I would wait until awfully late, but the final product is always better if I have taken the time to do it earlier. If for no other reason, because I can then step away from it for a day or two and go back and read it over again and think, oh, wait a minute, that's confusing. I could change this. Or, proofreading is something I've noticed students don't do a lot of.
Right.
Or they count on spell check to fix everything, and it doesn't.
Yeah, especially if you wait until the last second to write.
Yeah, there's just no time.
15-page paper. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like from personal experience, when you take that mental distance from whatever you're doing, come back to it with fresh eyes,
right,
fresh perspective, you will definitely make create a better product for sure. What's your process like, Kyan?
Well, you guys are really targeting me here because I'm a pretty bad procrastinator. It kind of depends on what class it's for. Like some classes, the paper topic isn't as isn't as involved as other ones might be, and so I feel that I can do them in a different kind of time frame. But typically, I'll do papers like 2 days before they're due, right? I'll do a rough draft, and then I'll finish it the next day and do editing and proofreading. But I mean, I never do anything more than 2 days before. I can't. I have too many things I got going on. Sometimes if I feel really motivated, I'll do like a rough draft or like an outline a week before or something. But then I end up still not doing it until the night before because I'm like, oh, you got so much done. You can wait till even later to do it now. So it's not good. And like Dr. Moser said, I can tell myself as much as I want. Cut that out. It's not good for you. But I'll probably keep doing it, honestly. But it's something I need to work on.
No one is judging you, Kyan.
I've been here almost 22 years, and it's been the same with students ever since I got here. Right. So I'm a realist. I'm not going to change that. I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but
as an undergraduate student, I was the same way. I mean, I remember writing 15-page, 20-page papers the night before.
Yeah,
not really sleeping at all. It's not healthy, but we know people still do it.
Yeah, and look, even physically, I can't do that. I wasn't even able to pull all-nighters in college. Right?
Oh, really?
At some point, like 3 or 4 in the morning, I just can't do it. I absolutely can't do it now. I go to bed at 9 or 10. As I already said, I kind of shut down in the evenings. So just the thought of not starting a project until the day before it's due and working late into the night, maybe all night, that's just not even a possibility.
See, what I find is that it also kind of depends on the kind of assignment. Like if it's, for example, I remember in reacting to the past games, and I think you've seen this with students that you've had in those classes. I mean, they're working on things outside of class right when they hear about it
Yeah.
because it's so much more involved than
Yeah.
just write a paper. And so
Right.
it also comes with the interest level. So if it's a topic or a class that I really enjoy, I'm more willing to work on it more outside of class and take more time because I actually want to look at it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But a lot of classes, it's a grueling thing. So I put it off because I'm like, I don't want to do this. And
Yeah.
then, it happens late.
Yeah. So if we're reacting to the past, and say it's a class that meets Tuesday, Thursday, and you want to have a paper that's to present on Thursday, or to speech you're going to give on Thursday, you want to be able, you want to react to what happened in Tuesday's class. So I totally understand why people don't. And in fact, I ask students to submit their papers for that 24 hours in advance so that others in the class have a chance to read. I don't know if they ever do, but to look at other people's papers and say, okay, here's what kind of arguments I can expect. Maybe here's the question that I would ask, or here's a counter argument I'd come up with. So yeah, they're looking at a very limited time frame often to get something out.
Right. So, speaking of communication, how important are communication skills for college students, and especially in the field of history and political science? If you could speak to that.
I mean, they're everything. It's what good is knowing lots of stuff if you have no way effectively of conveying that knowledge? For me, writing and speaking are equally important. They're an element but they're both an element of really all of my classes. I think of course, academics have always emphasized writing, but speaking is something that often gets passed over. Okay, everybody's going to take a communications course where they do public speaking, but as far as there in many fields, speaking is even going to be more important than writing. And the ability to get up in front of a group and present your ideas in a coherent fashion, and better yet, a compelling fashion, so that people will actually listen to you.
Right.
That's really important, and I think more faculty should push it. And I think the reason they don't is that they are far more. I think a lot of college faculty are introverts. That's not me, but okay, most of them are. And when they have a student who is terrified of public speaking, their natural response is to indulge that, because they kind of identify with it. Now, if a student came up to them and said, I am really terrified at the thought of writing, so how about I not have to write this essay? They'd say no, because they're comfortable. They're comfortable writing, more comfortable than they're speaking. So if I feel like I'm really scared about public speaking, okay, I will do my best to allay their fears about it, but I'm not going to say no, you don't have to do it because you're uncomfortable with it. We're supposed to be in college to do uncomfortable things. I mean, learning itself is uncomfortable.
Absolutely, so, yeah. That's an interesting take on this. I didn't think about how maybe, faculty members' personalities could actually affect the way they teach, and what things they tolerate, what things they don't. But even like with discussions, in-class discussions, I think that's also an important skill to have as a college student, being able to express your thoughts, discuss your thoughts with your classmates, listen actively, respond. I think since COVID, I think there has been, I don't know, in your professional experience, if you've seen any change in the trends of students we get and their oral skills.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only in my classes, but across our department, there is an emphasis on discussion rather than lecture. We hardly ever lecture, and there's some reticence. I've seen quite a few bad habits among students that I attribute entirely or partially to COVID. One of them is almost a shell shock about speaking in front of other people. Maybe they got too used to being in online courses. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. And I think all of the three of us are involved in first year seminar, and I'm really so proud of my students, reflecting on the first sessions, the first couple of weeks that we had, where almost all students were shy to speak, didn't want to interact with other people, didn't know. And
Yeah.
then toward the end of the semester, I could see everyone was comfortable, expressing themselves, talking to others, exchanging ideas. Were you able to see that kind of change?
Something like 2/3 of them dropped. But among the ones who were left, it was actually, yeah, we did have some pretty good conversations. So, and in fact, I had ended the semester saying, boy, was that really worthwhile? Did they just find it a waste of time? And I got the nicest email yesterday from one of the students who said it must have been hard with, so few people were coming to class. I think it was really helpful and I learned a lot. So
Very good, very good. I've heard some, stories from students who dropped the class. I think some of them thought, I don't know, maybe this is not reflective of the entire experience among these students, but some of them thought it was a lot of work for one credit course.
Yeah, yeah. I actually think that's right.
Yeah. And the thing I'd say is it's very hard to get students that aren't interested in those kind of texts to be interested in those kind of texts.
Very good.
And so when you're faced with like Ashbrook students, like you were talking about how the students that you interact with a lot, which I assume is mostly Ashbrook students, predominantly Ashbrook students, those are like the cream of the crop for wanting to communicate with each other. I mean, that's just what Ashbrooks do all the time. So if you like beyond the Ashbrook realm, it's a whole different ballgame. Like it's not even comparable. And it's when I TA'd for 2 different classes, and there were a few students that were very interested in what we were doing, but for the most part, I think students would very easily be interested in the topic. I just don't think many of them really wanted to give it a chance.
Yeah.
Right. The problem is that different teachers also had different course, like the amount of work they gave students. It was just it's hard to get that kind of student interested in a book like Cyrus the Great, like The Education of Cyrus. Sorry.
That's actually something else that I think has atrophied in the last few years, where it's COVID or something else. More than speaking skills is reading skills. I don't think young people read. I know. I mean, my own daughter hates reading, and based on look, in order to get a decent discussion of a reading going, a certain percentage of the class actually has to have read it. There are others who, if they're smart, can pick up on what other people are saying and join the conversation, even if they've read it. But if hardly anyone or no one has done the reading, you're not going to get very far at all.
Right.
And so reading is not something that they enjoy. If it's even those who do maybe aren't used to reading anything that's challenging, right? I mean, I'm all for young people reading Harry Potter, but if that's the most complicated thing you've ever read, college is going to be a bit of a challenge. So yeah, that's something I've definitely seen get worse in my 20 years here.
And you find even above that, when we were talking about the communication skills, it's a lot of students that aren't Ashbrooks I've found are less prone to wanting to speak up in class, are less prone to wanting to, because I mean, the first day you arrive as an Ashbrook student, you have a whole different experience. You're in a floor with the rest of the students that you're going to engage with the rest of the 4 years you're there, pretty much. you're hanging out with them from day one. Most of your classes are with them.
Mhm.
That barrier is almost instantly
Mhm.
broken. And the classes are structured in a way in which discussion is like necessary to get a good grade.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to still be an introvert by the time you graduate. That doesn't really exist as far as I see outside the classes I've taken outside of Ashbrook, at least very much. And so when you're in a freshman year seminar, that you're dealing with students that are new to college, that probably haven't had to be in discussion like settings very much, probably haven't or don't read that kind of text very much,
Mhm.
and are probably worried about when they speak up if what they say is going to be wrong or
Yeah.
Right.
they're going to be embarrassed by
Yeah.
what they say.
Yeah,
It's a lot of factors that clash in there.
definitely
Absolutely,
true.
Yeah.
That's a really fair point about the reading part. Even in my English 100 class, the last 3 years, I get students and I have them or ask them to read like a 4-page article in class, and they think that's too much. Oh no, we're gonna read the whole hour? What's going on? So yeah, there's that resistance. And I love the idea of first year seminar. I think that's a wonderful idea. Just to I love the aspect of having different faculty members, together discussing texts that are themselves not familiar with. I think that's in itself that's an accomplishment.
I think college students need to understand what intellectual endeavor is. And I think that there are certain majors at this institution, without mentioning any specifically, where students can go through it with having very little exposure to the intellectual. Thank God for the core, right? If it weren't for the core, they wouldn't have any exposure to what an intellectual conversation
Hmm.
is, and to be able to be part of one. So yeah, that's why I was a big supporter of the first year seminar idea. It's got kinks that need to be worked out, but I think it would be a huge mistake to abandon it altogether.
Right, right. And that sense of exploration, I think that's something that I believe a lot of us are working on and promoting among students. And I was having a conversation yesterday with Craig Hovey, Dr. Hovey, and
Mhm.
he said something interesting. He said the life of the mind is expansive, and that's something that students need to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of broadening our horizons, and what inspires you to write about such diverse topics from comic books to Japanese foreign policy? Is there a common thread that kind of connects these interests?
I feel like things naturally flow from one another. I mean, comic books. I used to read a lot of comic books when I was in high school, and then World War II was probably World War II, the Great Depression. That's my major area of academic interest. I became interested in specifically Captain America when the Captain America comics started to appear in late 1940. And so I wrote about the development of the character, and then I contrasted the war era Captain America, and then Cap kind of dried up after the war, and then didn't return until Marvel brought him back in the 1960s. And I compared the 60s version of the character to the original one. That was my foray into comic book history, but I've done a lot of reading as a result of that. And I think it's a fascinating glimpse into popular culture, because especially during World War II, young men read them voraciously, probably more than any other written form. They read comic books. They're stationed in Europe or in the Pacific. They read a bunch of them. So it was my interest in World War II and comic books sort of came together for that project. Japanese foreign policy. Well, I got interested in the Japanese side. Why did Pearl Harbor happen? And kind of went down a rabbit hole on that. I started to find the number of connections between the war and the economic crisis of the late 20s and early 30s. So I wrote some stuff about that. And so at the moment, I'm kind of in a Great Depression pattern. I had a concise history of the Great Depression come out last year. I am under contract to write another book about kind of debunking myths about the Great Depression. So yeah, I don't feel like I'm jumping around that much. Because there was sort of a logical progression that has taken me from one thing to another over a period of more than 20 years now. My first book came out in 99, and that was my dissertation.
Interesting. So yeah, like topically, it might be diverse, but you mentioned the progression, but also I think in terms of mediums. So you're not a typical author who is only interested in writing, but also designing and creating games. I think that's an interesting medium itself.
Which of course involves an awful lot of writing. But the challenges that are associated with game design are unique. So I've done, for example, I've designed a game set in 1914 in which the players portray world leaders at the time during this great crisis. So the Archduke Franz Ferdinand is shot, and is this going to go spinning off into a war? And so it involved a lot of historical research, and I had to write a very detailed background essay to introduce people to the subject. But I also had to come up with game rules that work. And the only way to know if game rules work is to play the game over and over and hope that other people will be interested enough to play the game. So any of these go through a lot of game testing. So they take a lot of time. My first game was called Japan 1941. And the players are Japanese leaders starting in 1940. And by the end, they have to decide if they're going to authorize an attack on Pearl Harbor. And so obviously you need to know a lot about the history of the period, but you have to find a way to make it a game and make it fun and make it worth playing, right? If you have roles that have no chance of winning, well, that's not fun. If it's always going to end up the same way, that's not fun. Maybe it's a simulation, but it's not a game. And you have to take into consideration a lot of what ifs. What would have happened had the Japanese not attacked Pearl Harbor? Well, you just got to spin out a scenario there. What if history is something that I think a lot of historians look down their nose at, but I think it's helpful. I mean, it can get silly with it. What if the Germans had an atomic bomb? That was nowhere near to happening. But one could easily imagine a scenario where the Japanese didn't attack Pearl Harbor. I would hope that anyone playing the game at the end will understand why they did, even if in the game they didn't make that historical decision. They would at least have a better understanding of the factors that led to it.
Yeah, Dr. Moser, I remember you have a class, or at least had a class, in which you have students also make games of their own, correct? I remember seeing a couple students last year creating games. Did you notice anything when watching students try to do a similar thing?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. I did this once, and it was for our capstone history course. And this was fall of 2022. I said, okay, we're gonna break up into teams, and each team is gonna design a game, and everybody had to pitch a game, and then we decided based on votes, people would present their ideas. We narrowed it down to 3 different ones. They're like teams of 4 worked on on each game, and I really liked what I saw. I thought there were some great ideas. Obviously, you're not going to do a complete game in a semester, but there were some things that could easily, with more work, get published. I think. I don't know that I'm going to do that. What I heard back, I asked students afterward what they thought about it, and they were like, "Well, too much game, not enough history." I got it. And so I taught the study of history seminar this semester as well, and we did the Churchill stuff instead. And I think I'm going to stick with that model from now on. I had fun. I hope they got something out of it. But yeah, they're probably right for a senior for the history capstone course. It probably really should be focused more on the history and less on games.
I like that reflective process. You're always, thinking about the game and students' experiences. Um, Forgive my ignorance. I haven't had the pleasure of playing any of the games. How much time did it take? Like if you play one round
Yeah.
of one of the games?
In an ordinary semester, we will normally play around 3 of them because they'll take about 5 weeks
Oh, really?
to get
Okay.
through. Yeah. So the standard scheduled game would have 2 or 3 classes of setup where you're talking about the background, the rules of the game, and then you go through the primary source readings that are associated with it. And then 5 or 6 actual game sessions where the game is being played. And at the end, a session of debriefing where everyone's out of character. Okay, what did we learn from this?
Interesting.
So yeah, and this is the hesitation that a lot of people have for using them, especially in a course like Western Civ. Western Civ 1 for me is a game set in Athens, ancient Athens, a game set in the late Roman Republic, although I've used a couple of games for that middle slot, and then a game set during the Fourth Crusade of 1204. I don't like spending time thinking about all the things that we did not go into as a result of that. Although a good reactor in the past game is going to bring in lots of different stuff, right? Even if it's the Fourth Crusade, you're going to get into issues about whether the state or the church ought to be in charge.
Right.
So it's not narrowly focused only on that incident. You learn about differences between the Roman Christianity and Orthodox Christianity. There are lots of different things, but you're making hard choices. I don't spend much time at all on early Christianity, and that bothers me, but not enough for me to stop doing it. My reasoning being, even if I taught it in a traditional fashion, I'd still couldn't teach everything, right? We're talking about 1,500 years, thousands of years of history. How do you pack that into a single semester without leaving stuff out? You don't. At least they're going to focus really in on these subjects, and they're going to learn it, and they're going to remember it. I think that's a fair trade-off.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, earlier, you mentioned content retention.
Yeah.
You could go chapter by chapter, the old-fashioned way, and this is chapter talks about history from this date to that date, and they will summarize that. But then again, in a month or maybe a year or 2 years, they're not going to retain much information. And plus, I think when they are engaged in those games, they're also activating their critical thinking.
Yep.
There's a lot of critiquing going on.
That's right.
That's interesting. Have you thought about maybe turning one of those games into a video game? Has that idea ever crossed your mind?
Well, I just don't know anything about video game development. I mean, I imagine they could be but so much of it is interaction,
Right.
and making arguments to one another. I don't know how. They're not really action based,
Right.
The way a typical video game would be. I mean, sometimes action happens. At the French Revolution game, crowds riot and kill people. But there might be ways to incorporate some video stuff.
That would be groundbreaking, something more interactive and educational.
Yeah. Now there is I just tried one. I wanted to give the students in Western Civ a short introduction. It was the second class of the semester. One class it was just course introduction. Second class we played this one session game called Athens Besieged. Set in Athens at the end of the Peloponnesian War, the Spartans and their allies have the city surrounded. They're starving people out. Almost everybody in the game plays somebody who is in Athens, and it's played entirely on their phones. They have their very brief role descriptions telling them who they are and what they want on their phones. When they discuss stuff in class, but when it comes time to vote, they vote on their phones. And then every so often it's announced, well, some of you starved to death because you're running out of food, and the game determines randomly who dies. It says, okay, you're out, and it gives you a new character. So that's an example of it's a short reacting to the past game. I don't even know if it's called a reacting to the past game, but it introduces somebody to historical role play.
Interesting. And I can also sense and tell how much of your theater background is being, used in your own teaching. Do you see a connection between what you do inside the classroom and your interests in theater?
Heck yeah. I think, I think having a sense of the theatrical definitely helps in the classroom. It helps keep people's attention, for one thing. But why did I seize on to the reacting to the past series? Game, acting, because they're playing roles. It's not an acting class, but you can tell the students who really get into it because they use accents. They have some costume elements and stuff like that. Although I certainly don't require it. And you can do very well at the game without those things, but they're the ones who really commit, and they're the most fun, to be honest. So history, acting, games. That's a trifecta for me.
Absolutely. What a combination, right, Kyan?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I took other Western Civ classes, or really just classes in general, I found that the teachers that will lecture, write the notes on the slide, here's the exam lecture. That's where you'll find students in the back of the classroom on their phones. That's where you'll find students that are engaged. That's where you'll find students that, they don't get a whole lot out of it. But the reacting to the past games kind of force you to get something out of it, because you can't be on your phone in the middle of the game. You can't you just can't do that. And when students are involved in that kind of process, they gain so many other skills from it, as we've already said. I know I've only taken one class with React to the Past games. I know I also helped out with the one class's game, but I wasn't in that class.
Yeah.
Are we doing any for the World War II class this next semester? I know we're doing one.
Just doing one. Most of the class is going to be discussion, just traditional discussion based, but while we're in Germany, we're going to play a game set at the Yalta Conference of 1945. So everybody will be a member of the US faction, the British faction, or the Soviet faction.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Is that the game that you do for the Ashbury Academies as well, the Yalta Conference? Right?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I never got to do that one. That's sweet. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Moser, if you didn't know, I'm going to Germany at the end of the school year. Dr.
I didn't know.
Is also doing that.
Yeah. That's a nice segue. What could you tell us about that trip, and how can students sign up for that?
Well, it's too late now, so if you're not signed up, you're not going. But the AU in Germany program has been around for a while. I think they're going to go to. It was every year for a long time, but now it's going to be an every other year thing. We go to Wittenberg, which is in Eastern Germany, about an hour from Berlin. We will be that'll be our home base. We are going to be doing. We're going to have classes there, although the courses are going to be spring courses. Half of the course sessions are going to be in spring semester, and then the other half are going to be in Germany. And we're going to do some traveling and see a lot of different things. Now, it's a different theme each time depending on who is leading the trip. But because Professor Metzger in psychology and I are leading it, we're doing World War II. And I'm teaching my World War II course. He is teaching a course on the psychology of the Holocaust. So we will be seeing all kinds of sites associated with those things. But if there are students listening and they like this idea, I think the idea is it would be offered every 4 years. So I don't know, maybe.
Oh, really? Okay.
So maybe some people who are seeing this might have an opportunity to do it before they graduate, but
Hopefully.
especially if they're watching this in 2024.
Right. So there's a lot of hands-on. So some of it will be in class, and a lot of it will be.
Yeah, there are 7 days when we will be in Wittenberg with classes, and the classes will be 2 hours a day on those days. So 2 hours with me on World War II, 2 hours with Professor Metzger doing psychology of the Holocaust, and then the remainder. So that's I think we're going to be there a total of 17 days. So 10 days of traveling, 7 days in the classroom.
And everything will be, I guess, taught in English, right? So yeah, okay.
I'm certainly not equipped to teach in any other language. Although I'm going through I'm going through Duolingo to brush up on German.
Right.
I minored in German as an undergrad, but if you don't use those skills, as you know,
Absolutely.
they atrophy.
I follow your well, I don't know what you'd call them, Duolingo achievements.
Oh yeah.
Badges. So
yeah, I'm gonna put those out there.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough right now. I have a lot of study abroad trips coming up, so I have like 6 Duolingos going at the same time.
That's crazy.
Just trying to get basic information down for when I go.
You're going to Spain soon, Kyan, right?
I'm going to Spain over spring break with the jazz band. Then I'm going to Germany, and then I just recently decided to go to South Korea in July for 3 weeks.
Wow.
With another program, and then I'm going to Japan for the spring semester next year.
Japan also on the soccer team.
Japan was one of the best places I've ever visited. I was only there for like 4 days in Tokyo. I had such a good time. I'd love to go back.
What do you like about Tokyo?
What's that?
What do you like about Tokyo?
Here's how I describe it. Imagine New York City and Washington, D.C. pushed together, and you take away the dirt, the noise, the rudeness, and the crime. I mean, I'm sure there's some of all that, but not nearly as much as you would find in either Washington, D.C. or New York City. And I found it remarkable how quiet. I mean, it's a massive city, millions and millions of people. I'm shocked at how quiet the cars are even quiet, and they're not honking like American drivers or drivers in most of the world for that matter. So yeah, I was really impressed.
Our Japanese students have always been some of the nicest, kindest people.
Yeah.
Karaoke, John, how is that important to you?
Karaoke. Boy, I remember the first time I did karaoke. It was like the fad was just taking off. I think it was in the early 1990s, and we were at some bar somewhere. Oh yeah, I'll try this, and I sang an Elvis song, and this is great. Yeah, it's just it's just fun to get up there and be a ham, and I like to think I have a pretty good voice.
No, you do.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, so I don't get a chance too often to do karaoke, but when I can do it, I do it.
And now you have a nickname, right?
Oh yeah, stage name.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I actually have 3, but there's only one of them that I actively use anymore. My first was Johnny Pulse, and then Donnie Lambrusco, right? So I was doing the but the one I use most commonly is Wayne Fontaine.
There you go. Yeah,
a classic lounge singer name. I think we do a lot with Wayne Fontaine. Donnie Lambrusco. If I'm going to stick with Italian stuff, maybe some Dean Martin. Then Donnie Lambrusco is good. Yeah, Wayne.
Are you involved with the? I got an email. I think it was from Ben Kunkel not too long ago, where it said that a couple of the Ashbrook faculty were going to do karaoke at the library and at in the student center, something like that. Are you involved with that too?
Yeah, that was me. It was just something that some of us cooked up at F3. No, it was at F3. It was at the rec center. So Metzger and McBrayer and Nick Johnson and I were saying, because we had for the last few years gone out and done karaoke around at Christmas time, and it wasn't going to work out this year. We thought, hey, what if we did it on campus? I wonder if I could borrow a karaoke system, and I did. and we got permission to set up in the library and in Eagles Landing, and it was a big success, mostly at Eagles Landing. Many more people came there, so I think we're going to try to make that an annual tradition.
So I think the time when you had it here on the first floor of the library, people were having finals.
Yeah.
But it was also, it was a nice opportunity to lighten the mood, and I saw some students, go into their final classes, but then they heard the music that cheered them up, and
much better acoustics in the Eagles Landing, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, in that big space on the main floor of the library, I think a lot of the sound just got diffused.
Right. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the field of history. Why should students at this point in time seek to major in history? Some might argue that history as an academic field is dying. I don't believe that personally, but some might argue.
If you look at national trends, it does look like it's dying. Oddly, it's not dying at Ashland. Our numbers are just fine. In fact, this may be the first year where we have as many history majors as we have political science majors. And when I got here, I mean, the number of history majors was like a quarter the size of the number of political science majors. But yeah, I mean, national trends are working against it. I think, to be honest, I think that history at most places is being taught in a way that just doesn't get people interested. The most common question I get from parents, especially, is, well, what a history major, what are you going to do with that? And there's the answer that I want to give, and there's the answer that I do give. The answer I want to give is that's the wrong question. The question is what's going to be better for you. But I can see why people aren't, well, yeah, but I'm shelling out all this money for my kid to go to college. I want to make sure he's going to have some kind of job. So the answer I actually give is it, in a way, it doesn't prepare you for anything, but it prepares you for everything. There are a lot of majors that do this, political science certainly, but you will learn how to read challenging texts. You will learn how to think critically about those readings. You will learn how to present your own ideas on those readings, both in written form and in oral form. And you will learn to listen to others give their arguments and respond to them. Now, if you are set on a job in medicine, maybe that's not. I mean, I think it could be useful in anything, but if you're set on a career in the hard sciences, then maybe I'm going to say, okay, major in chemistry or something or something like that. But if you want really anything else, what fields are not going to, I mean, what areas, what occupations are not going to be helped by being able to communicate effectively, being able to read critically, to think clearly. So there you go. That's why people should study history. Not that they should become historians in the sense that they should dedicate their careers to the study of history. Although I love the fact that I get to do that. I don't tell people. In fact, I try to dissuade people from pursuing history as a career. Or academia in general is so tough. But I think a major in history can be good for virtually anyone.
And what I've found is so many of my peers who aren't going into a specific job that requires a specific degree, like going to med school or something. Those kind of jobs, most jobs make up this kind of sector. They don't look for a specific kind of major. They look for you having completed a 4-year degree.
Yeah, right.
So like, for example, one of my friends, he wants to become a commercial pilot. He just needs a 4-year degree. Yep. So when there's so many jobs like this. When you're looking for for majors that help out after college, history is great for that. Yeah. Because so many of these jobs require you to be able to think critically.
Yeah.
And if it's something that you enjoy while you're doing it, history is a great option.
They want a 4-year degree because they want to know you can do the work.
Exactly.
And I suggest major in what interests you most on the theory that you will do better in those fields. You'll end up with a better grade point average and a better overall record. Yeah, there are probably some majors that are silly that would actually work against you, but history is not one of them.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, John. Yeah, thank you. Kyan, any questions, comments before we bring this to close? Okay. All right. So, John, finally, what advice would you give to students? I suppose, Ashland University students or any student who is aspiring to pursue a degree in history or a career in history or political science?
Be prepared to read, and if you start off with a reading that's challenging, this is something that's taken me a while. The worst thing you could do is say, I just don't get it, and toss it aside. Go over it again. There are so many works that I have read over and over again, and then I will see something, wait a minute, I never noticed that before. Or better yet, a student points to this, and I say, wow, how have I missed that all those times? So there are some disciplines that are really young men's games. Math is one of them, right? I mean, the mental agility that is necessary, that level of brilliance. It seems like those who get the Nobel Prizes and those things are people who are young in their career. They are that brilliant. History is a field that you get better as you get older because you read more, you absorb more, you synthesize more information. The people who are the biggest name historians are the ones who have been around longer. So the study of history seems really daunting if you're starting out, but the more you keep at it, the more information you're going to have to draw on, and the more threads you're going to be able to weave together. So I suggest that. Yeah, and reading's tough stuff. Keep at it. I remember being an undergraduate and thinking, I just don't get this. And some of those things I've gone back to and I said, wow, how did I not understand? It just seems so clear now. Also, historical empathy. Learn empathy. Even the most horrible people in history. I'm not asking you to I don't ask anyone to sympathize with awful people. Don't sympathize with Hitler. I tell you not to do that. But empathize. Understand why awful people thought the way they do, and try to understand how, without resorting to mental illness, how a rational person could come to the conclusions that they did. So there.
Interesting approach to trying to understand history, especially. So before we call it a day, how is Rudy?
Rudy's fine. The dogs have been expelled from the room. He is the best puppy though. I mean, I've had labs before, and they're crazy as a breed, at least in my experience. This is a lab puppy. He's 4 months old. He's so well behaved. He's mellow. Yeah, you can get him excited, get him worked up, but he is also perfectly content to snuggle. He's teething though, so he wants to. He's very mouthy, but he's a great dog. I love him to pieces. We have 3 dogs, but don't tell the other 2. He's my favorite.
All right, we'll keep it a secret. Well, thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, and for your commitment to our students, and for taking the time from your busy schedule to be with us on WoW Podcast. It's been a pleasure having this candid and nice conversation. Wish you happy New Year and continued success at AU.
Likewise. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you, Kyan.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
See ya.